This is dedicated to the homies that was down since day one. Welcome to Drop D.
Hey, what is up? What's shaking? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Quick Hits, a JFK assassination research and study news and notes podcast. You are with the gold standard in JFK assassination study and research in on-demand auditory form. There really is no second place. With me, as always, is my esteemed partner, my esteemed co-host and co-creator of this podcast, Mr. Rob Clark. Hello, buddy.
Hello, Doug. How's it going, buddy?
Man, it's going pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm feeling good. I'm drinking the coffee from the bottom of the pot, the burnt shit.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm ready to go, baby.
I'm ready to go as well, man. And I too am highly caffeinated this morning. Little jumpy, not gonna lie. Little jerky, little jumpy.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Oh, hey, dude.
That just means we're in for an exciting show.
It's going to be a great show. We have plenty of energy. I felt like you and I were maybe a little lacking of energy in the last one. We kind of kicked back and let Bart do a lot of the heavy lifting on that one. What do you think? Or am I wrong?
Well, it's very easy to let Bart do the lifting when he's on the show. He loves to talk.
That's why we love Bart.
We just kick back and, hey, come on, hey, Bart, you want to be on the show again for the 5th time? Come on.
Yeah, that was neat the way that worked out, though. Like, you know, it's like you were telling your buddy to meet you down at the coffee shop or something. Like, hey, man, me and Rob are going to get together in a minute. You want to come? Sure. Cool.
Anytime Bart's on the show, it's always a pleasant surprise. I love talking to him. He makes me chuckle, and he's a great guy, and he does very important work on the Kennedy assassination. So it's always a pleasure and a treat whenever Bart joins us.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, man. Long show, too. Long show. Oh, hey, dude, we have, I want to introduce to everybody, we have a new producer, guys, who has cycled in.
Yes.
Rob, you two have never met at all in the control room for us. Say hello, Rob, to Momo.
What is up, Mr. Momo?
Bob. That's your name, right? Bob?
Yes, Momo. Some people do call me Bob, and you may, if you like, yes.
It's actually Rob, Momo.
Rob, if you don't back the fuck up off that microphone a little bit, I'm going to get the bolt cutters and finish your bris.
Goddamn.
Hey, ease up, Momo. Goddamn, motherfucker. What? Hey, Doug, where did you find this motherfucker at, dude? Goddamn.
Cycled in. He's an intern, man.
Wow.
Most guys that work here with us don't even care to have a talkback mic, but Momo insisted. Yeah, and he's off to a rollicking start, isn't he? Rob, time to dig in.
Yes, sir.
To the studies, my man, and right off the bat, sir, we have a special report. Yep, this is something I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Check this out, Rob. Let me. Where is my page of notes on this certain thing? JFK assassination student, researcher, and declassified documents expert, Mr. Joe Bax, sent me this link in an email headed Red Alert, guys. And after reading the story, I totally agree and knew, Rob, that we had better let everybody know what's going on down in Dallas, Texas. Guys, this is from the Dallas Morning News, published less than 1 month ago, October 20th of this year, an article by one Mark Lamster, the quote-unquote architecture critic of the Dallas Morning News. This is pretty interesting. Guys, they want to reinvent and reimagine Dealey Plaza. Rob, you got a load of this this article I sent you, right?
I did. And just as a quick aside before we get into this.
Yeah.
I noticed and I wrote about it on a Dealey Plaza UK website after my trip to Dallas. I noticed that several buildings along Houston Street were getting a facelift. The County Records building, the Dow Tex building already looks different than it did back in the day. And several other buildings right there along Houston Street were getting a facelift, if you will. And I just think it falls right in line with the way that we're trying to erase history. I mean, personally, I thought that Dealey Plaza was a historical landmark, which meant that you can't fuck with it. But apparently, I'm wrong. Please do go ahead, Doug, and let everybody know what the plans are because it appears that things are going to look drastically different downtown.
Well, they're planning on it. It's what they want to do. This is and like this guy is the architecture critic for the Dallas Morning News.
There's a job for you.
Yeah. Now, I before I read this article, I will preface this by saying that I haven't been able to find an update on this, but this article again was written on October 20th, and this proposal was presented, I guess, to the city of Dallas this past Tuesday night, and I haven't been able to, as of yesterday, find a write-up on any sort of results to that. But the title is Reinventing Dealey Plaza, a new proposal to transform Dealey Plaza, the Triple Underpass, and Martyrs Park into a space for memory, reflection, and celebration. The time has come for Dallas to redesign Dealey Plaza and the Triple Underpass, which together represent one of the city's most profound urban failings. He writes that these spaces define Dallas, there where the city began and the site of several of its most tragic moments meet in history. Now, it says here, it is a deplorable state of affairs, but also a great opportunity, a chance to transform this site into a space of civic memory and understanding that embraces the past and points to the future. The Dallas Morning News, the newspaper themselves, commissioned a team of distinguished designers to present a bold new vision for how this space might be reimagined. The group was led by Chris Reed of Stoss Landscape Urbanism, Monica Ponce de Leon, she's from Princeton, New Jersey, architects. And it's a big sweeping change. The things they want to do. They want to, first of all, make, says here, introduce a memorial overlook in a promontory linking Dealey Plaza and Martyrs Park. Turn Elm Street into a space for pedestrians and create memorial pools marking the points where bullets hit President Kennedy. And then they put parenthetically, removing the vulgar white X's painted by assassination theorists. Vulgar white X's. Yeah. But now, it is that stretch of Elm Street would be pedestrian only. What they're going to do is route traffic down and kind of reroute traffic to the middle there. And says here, install a lighting program beneath the Triple Underpass that would reference history as the original course of the Trinity. Transform Houston Street in front of Dealey Plaza with new paving to calm traffic. I guess they're talking about how it's kind of hip in urban areas to use like brick paving now in certain older spots, that kind of thing. Remake Commerce Street as a multimodal landscape boulevard leading to the Lou Street Justice Center and Trinity Park. It's a big change. Like you say, or like I said, behind the picket fence, there's like a public park back there in the artist renderings, where you can sit. It's stepped, step down like an amphitheater kind of thing with grassy lanes there, and then there's a flat sort of concrete area, and there's this elevated promenade deck type thing that goes from there around to the top of the triple overpass. Now they're not talking about even in the artist renderings, Rob, the grassy knoll is still there with the picket fence.
Yeah, I still don't like the idea, man. I
don't like the idea. But I don't like the idea, but it's not the word. If you're going to do something to it, turning that stretch into pedestrian only.
Well, they could do that without totally fucking everything up.
They could do that part now.
Elm Street. up by the depository and reroute traffic the other way. I mean, they don't have to totally change the landscape and put pools in and all this other weird stuff. I mean, I think it's highly important for students of the case, people interested in history, to go there and experience it as it was, as close as it can be. And I mean, I know it was important for me to go and actually see it with my own two eyes, and it was disappointing, to know the kind of facelift and changes that have been made to the school book depository over the years, and the Dow Tex building, and seeing the fascias of all these other buildings on Houston Street changing before your eyes, and it just changes. I don't know. I'm just not down with it at all. I mean, these historical landmarks are preserved for a reason, and I think that they could cut that off and make it into a memorial park in a different way without drastically changing the landscape of the area of the grassy knoll, the triple underpass, and Elm Street. You know what I mean?
I didn't really. That's the thing, though. I didn't see a lot of, or really any changing of the landscape down in the plaza itself around Elm and in the knoll. even in the artist renderings, the picket fence is still there. It's just behind the picket fence, like where all the parking lot is. That's where the amphitheater and shit, or that's where they call it here, Memorial Overlook forms an amphitheater facing Dealey Plaza, a place for gathering, education, and reflection. I like that. That's kind of new agey. What do you think, Rob? They're really trying to sell it. They're really pouring it on thick there.
They are really trying to sell it. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, the only thing that was drastically altered, or at least in the artist renderings, are from the picket fence back, away from the plaza. They're just dressing up back there where the parking lots were. And like the tower Lee Bowers was in, is that even still there?
Yeah.
Is it
but
really?
They want to take that out. Yeah.
Oh, wow. No, we don't want to touch that. No. I guess my point is,
for me, it opens the door for more down the road.
Oh, I totally get that.
I totally get that. Okay, hey, what they're doing to the buildings there is bad enough. When you start talking about messing with other things, that parking lot's back there for a reason. It's needed, for the sixth floor museum. And it's not like, you have hundreds of people there gathering every day. You know what I mean? 364 days of the year is pretty much business as usual.
Yeah.
People that live there and drive there all the time probably don't even think twice about going through Dealey Plaza or what happened there, 60 years ago. And I don't know. I just think it could be done without drastically altering the landscape, even peripherally, because I think every square inch of that place is important and needs to be seen and taken in, so that you can grasp, a concept. When somebody finally makes it there in person, to be able to look around and take in all your surroundings and take in all the possibilities of what could possibly happen there that day. If that's what you're interested in. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, when I was there, I was kind of sad about the school book depository and how much they fucked with it and changed the architecture around. I mean, they even redid the entrance. They even, took out elevators. They, messed with the facing of the building. They took out the loading dock. It's just, I don't know. To me, it's sad that, something that that should be preserved as a historical landmark. I believe, at least for me, I thought it was something that meant that they couldn't change it. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point is I'm not advocating it or even saying that I'd be okay with it. I firmly agree with you. It needs to be left alone. But as far as if you're gonna fuck with anything, the parking area back there, I guess that what I'm saying is it could have been a lot worse. They could wipe it out if they wanted to. Completely. Tear the whatever that they could do whatever they wanted. It wasn't the worst plan if you're gonna renovate anything. And I still think that maybe the other part, the traffic part, is long overdue.
I agree. I mean, that part of Elm Street,
yeah,
is not needed whatsoever.
Yeah, that's long overdue, man.
You can transfer that over to Main Street, and then after the triple underpass, reconfigure things.
Yeah, just merge. Yeah,
you could close that section of Elm Street off to the public and just preserve it as what it is a piece of history. Right there on that street. History changed 60 years ago, and it's one of the biggest events in American history. And to change anything at all about that street, to me, it's, I don't know, sacrilegious. You want to put in pools or whatever. I mean, people, when you go there, I want to see where the X is. Where was he shot? Right here. Right, exactly right here.
Yeah. I saw this story was mentioned in a forum online, and these dudes were arguing like, well, if they can't put the memorial pool at Z314, they got to put the memorial pool at Z224. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, really?
Yeah, they're going to put a pool where they think each shot was, and then, of course, that'll be another point for people to argue about. Well, it didn't happen here. It happened 3 centimeters to the left, and
yeah, you've got your X 3.5 inches too far inland or some shit. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'm like you. Leave that surface alone. From the middle of the plaza all the way back to the picket fence. And that surrounding area. Leave it alone. Leave that alone. That needs to be preserved, just like Ford's Theater, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, watch me find out tomorrow that they tore it down. But I've never been there. But you know what I'm saying? It needs to be left alone. But I think that's long overdue, and that's a real easy thing for the city of Dallas to do from a public works standpoint, is to make that a pedestrian-only area right there on Elm, and make the traffic merge when it gets on the other side of the triple underpass. You do a little bit of paving, a little bit of grade work, boom, you're done. And that, to me, again, is long overdue.
Agreed. Yeah. I think this jackass at the Dallas Morning News, the architecture critic, or whatever the hell he wants to call himself, to me, this just screams of, what can I do to stir up some shit in Dallas, to get people talking. And so who knows if this is actually going to happen or not, or if it legally can happen or not. Right now it's just artist renderings, and people are talking about it. So, hopefully, at least for me, hopefully this doesn't happen. But, I guess we'll have to see.
Man, it's a Dallas Morning News led initiative. They commissioned the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Man. Imagine that.
Welcome.
And feed them fish heads. All right. Thank you to Mr. Joe Bax for sending me that. Guys, like I say, as of recording this podcast, I haven't got any updates on how the proposal went, blah, blah, blah. I haven't found anything yet, but we'll try to update on this proposal to change the historic site that is Dealey Plaza on the next Quick Hits, hopefully. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah, we'll keep you abreast.
Or two.
Yes. All right, Doug.
Yeah, man.
I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Have you ever heard who was the man in blue?
Which man in blue? Where?
I don't know. Well, we're gonna read a little story about the man in blue.
The man in blue. All right, I'm down.
Yeah. I found this in somewhere. I'm assuming I really should start writing where I find this shit at. It's probably in Malcolm Blunt's HSCA archives over there on Dealey Plaza, UK. But it was under a section for the HSCA, and it's new old witnesses. Um, so let me just read you a little bit of this. It's about an eyewitness.
Cool.
Because on Friday, November the 22nd, 1963, I was working for Keller Northrop as a salesman of heating, air conditioning, ice making equipment, and air filter service in Dallas. My clients were restaurants, bars, clubs, and any business which required our equipment and air filter service. On that particular Friday morning, I drove to Oak Cliff, a suburb of Dallas, to call on clients, and I recall being on Davis Street when I stopped for a moment to see if I had another call to make or go back to the office to have lunch.
All
I
right.
also needed to decide where I would go to Mass that day, because at that time I had made a special vow that I would attend Mass daily. So the guy has turned his life around, and
On the straight and
very
narrow.
Catholic. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Living
This is
by God's plan, as it were.
yes.
Yes.
God bless him.
Cleanliness
I
and all
decided
that.
yes. I decided to go to noon mass at the Our Lady of Guadalupe Church on Harwood Street with the children from St. Anne's School. Okay. As I was coming back from Oak Cliff, I drove through downtown Dallas and saw people lined up on either side of Main Street. And then I remembered that, oh, hey, President Kennedy was coming to Dallas that day. I also recalled reading the newspaper the day before and the route which was printed on the front page. When I reached Our Lady of Guadalupe, it was about noon, and Father Gabriel and the school children were walking out the door. I asked him what had happened to Mass, and he said the president would be coming by across the street, and he is more important than talking to God. No, I just added that part there. I'm joking. I asked him what had happened to Mass, and he said
I was poised to react. I'm not gonna lie.
I asked him what happened to Mass, and he said that the president would be coming by across the street, and the children wanted to see him rather than talk to God. He asked me if I wanted to join them, which I did. We walked across the street to Cedar Springs, where the motorcade would be passing. I remember looking up while we were waiting, and I saw one or two men dressed in suits with rifles on top of one of the buildings. It made me think that there was security everywhere. There were patrolmen at almost every intersection. Now, this is interesting, Doug, that little thing there, because there was actually no Secret Service at all posted on the tops of buildings in Dallas during the motorcade.
None
Period.
whatsoever. None.
None. And he doesn't say that they were in uniforms. He says that they were in suits. Okay?
Yep.
In a few minutes, the motorcade showed up, and the president and Mrs. Kennedy were a brilliant presence. I had never seen a president in person before. When the president and Mrs. Kennedy saw all the beautiful children lined up by the side of the street together, with the nuns and the priests and the children in their uniforms, the president seemed to have personally acknowledged their presence with a broad and beautiful smile. Mrs. Kennedy looked radiantly beautiful, stretched some to get a good look at the children as they passed. After the motorcade passed, I looked at my watch and decided I would eat lunch in my car. I remembered the route of the motorcade, so I drove downtown to try and see the president once more. I drove to Pacific Avenue and couldn't find the parking place, so I parked right next to a building at the corner of Record and Pacific by the railroad tracks and facing west, which would have me looking in the direction of the rear dock of the school book depository. Excuse me. Sitting there in my car and trying to decide if I should park illegally or go on, I saw a man walking along the railroad tracks away from the school book depository towards Ross Avenue. He was just past my car, and going away from the area where the parade was going by. I didn't think much about it at the time, but I do recall wondering why he was walking away from the area rather than toward it. I thought
Uh-huh.
I might be I thought I might be too late to see the president again. You were, motherfucker, because the man was probably, maybe we got a description of the man he saw, Doug. The man was
All
probably
right.
6 feet tall or more and was dressed in blue coveralls and a stained white or off white hat. Headband seemed sweaty, like a farmer's if he'd been working. He was a heavy man, and at the time I thought he looked like a man I had worked with some years back at a freight dock loading trucks. I do not believe I got to see the man's face. Anyway,
Six
while I
feet
was
tall
there,
and heavy,
yes,
wearing stained coveralls.
yes. Well, no, his hat was stained.
His hat was stained.
Yeah. Uh, anyway, while I was there, and from where I was, I could see all the way to Main Street. And then I saw the buses pass, and I realized I had missed the president's car because I remembered that the buses were at the end of the motorcade.
And that's the
Right?
press bus, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So at this time, I remembered the president was having lunch at the Trade Mart on Industrial. This was one of the buildings we serviced. So I decided I would go there and see him walk in. Naively, I even thought, I have a pass to the building and maybe I can get in. As I drove away from the area behind the depository, I drove north on Lamar Street and under the viaduct or underpass headed to Continental under Stemmons Freeway. As I emerged from the underpass, I looked up and saw the president's car headed north at great speed. I thought they were running behind schedule. It seems I heard the sirens on the escort cars or motorcycles, but I am not sure. I had my radio on low, and all of a sudden, the disc jockey said something like, "Ladies and gentlemen, something is very wrong. It seems that the president has been shot. We don't know anything yet, but we'll keep you informed. It seems this happened at the Texas School Buck Depository Building." At the time,
Hey,
the
Rob,
building.
that was
Yes, sir.
awesome. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a man of 1,000 voices. At that time, the building was not very familiar to us in Dallas, and I thought he was talking about the Federal Reserve Bank building, which was further downtown. I didn't realize that I had just left from behind the building that this guy was talking about. Okay, so this guy's posted up behind the school book depository
Right.
and sees a man leaving shortly after the assassination would have occurred.
On foot.
By this time, yeah, on foot.
On foot.
Yes. Okay, he says, I then drove toward Oak Lawn Avenue, running back toward the office, but I had turned up the volume on the radio. I decided to stop at the Holy Trinity Church on Oak Lawn to say a prayer, because at that time the announcer seemed to have been saying he thought the president was alive but in critical condition. He also mentioned the president was going to be taken to Parkland Hospital. Before going into the church, I went to the office and asked the secretary if I could use the phone to call my wife to tell her what was happening. Holy Trinity is only minutes away from Parkland. Father Huber was pastor of the Holy Trinity at the time. I suppose the secretary told Father Huber what I had told her. I have always wondered if my visit there was the reason why Father Huber showed up at Parkland Hospital and gave President Kennedy his last rites instead of the priest who had been called. I went into the church and said some prayers, hoping the president would live. I then got into my car and drove to Parkland. I went to the chapel, which was in the lobby near the public telephones. And while I was in the chapel, I heard a reporter calling somewhere, and he said, "This is official. The president died at 1:25 this afternoon." I do not know who that reporter was. I stepped outside the hospital, and at about this time, a white hearse was leaving with a lot of police escort. It seemed to me that it was quick to be leaving with the body. Later on, I found out that was the hearse bearing the president's body. Went back to work, and there was turmoil at the office. I didn't say much to anybody because it seemed like everyone knew what was going on and what was happening. At that time, I really did not think that where I had been and seen was important because it just seemed like an open and shut case. According to the news and television reports, Oswald had shot and killed the president, then he killed Officer Tippit and was caught at the Texas Theater in Oak Cliff. Everyone that I talked to in the next few days apparently assumed what I had assumed about the way things had happened. Then we all saw Jack Ruby shoot Oswald on TV, pretty much open and shut. Bob Jackson, the Times Herald photographer who took the famous photo of Ruby shooting Oswald, was a school buddy of mine. We both graduated from SMU in 1957, and it was interesting how famous he got as a result of that photograph. I really did not say much to anyone about where I was and saw until some years later when my brother-in-law at the time, Gene Evans, and my sister Josie came to visit us in Dallas. Gene was and still is a professional photographer in Hollywood. I asked him if he would like to see the place where the president had gotten shot, and he replied that he had already seen the place because he was the camera operator who had shot the documentary for Washington. But he said he would like to see it again. On the way, I explained to him where I had been at the time of the shooting, and Gene asked me if I had reported this to the authorities, and I told him that I had not. He suggested that even though time had passed, I should contact them. So I sketched a map and I explained where I had been at the time of the assassination. I sent it to the FBI in Washington. This was, of course, after the Warren Commission had closed their hearings. I received a reply and was told that the information would be filed, and if they needed me, they would contact me. To this day, I have never been contacted.
Big
Time of the
surprise.
assassination, yeah. At the time of the assassination, I frequented a cafe in downtown Dallas by the name of La Casa Blanca. That means White House, folks.
The
It was a
White House.
cafe
Yes.
Yeah.
Bilingual
was a
Rob,
cafe.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
A man, he's a worldly man. Not only of a thousand
Yes.
voices, but at least two languages. Rob Clark.
Yes. It was a cafe and pool hall in the rear. A fellow named Martinez.
Hey,
played
wait
dominoes.
wait up. Did you just say
Yeah.
poo hole in the rear?
Pool hall.
Oh, okay. I'm
was-
sorry.
It was a cafe with a pool hall in the rear.
Pool hall in the rear.
I might have said hole. It might
You
have been a
did-
Freudian slip. I don't know.
You didn't say poo hole in the rear? That's what I heard anyway. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, every time I say school book depository, in my head, I always think, did I just say suppository or depository?
Liberty Lobby.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'll stop clowning. I apologize.
It's fine. It's fine. It's perfectly deserved. A fellow named Martinez, who played dominoes there, told me that his wife, who worked in the area of the depository, witnessed the shooting, had a heart attack, and died at the hospital. Oswald, or whoever the assassin was responsible for more than one death that day, for sure. I believe this poor lady had left 8 children behind. I've often wondered if the man in the blue coveralls could have had anything to do with the assassination. Everything that I witnessed that day, the timing, it all just seems too. I can't barely make out his last word, but
Maintenance
it's just
crews.
signed David. Yeah, David Glasgow Romo.
Romo?
That's the guy's name. Yeah, Tony Romo's father.
Well, the coveralls make me think of what we've heard in the past from different different places. What we read that there were maintenance crews in the depository at the time, and even in Oliver Stone's film, one of the crews that fired, I believe, in the film from the fifth floor opposite side. One of those 3-man crews were dressed in coveralls.
Right.
Yeah.
And also people that were witnessed, behind the grassy knoll, kind of breaking the weapon down or shooting or whatever was going on back there.
Ed Hoffman.
We're dressed in coveralls or work clothes.
Wasn't that the witness Ed Hoffman? Isn't that what he mentioned coveralls as well? Or am I mistaken?
I don't know that he mentioned anything because he can't talk, but that's it. That's the story of the man in blue. Mark it.
Mark it? Okay.
Mark it.
I did. I promise. I'm a little taken aback right now. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, you know what? Let me think. Hang on.
Hey, Momo, did you get that? Mark that.
I think, hey, you know what? This might be a good time to take a break. What do you think, Rob?
Sure. Why the fuck not?
Why the fuck not? Momo, what do you think? Good time to take a break?
Hey, sure. What do I care?
All right. Cool. Well, let's do that. We'll be right back. Hey, Doug here. Taking a minute to give you a heads up. An all-new issue of our favorite history periodical is dropping, guys, and that is issue number 11 of Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics, from Midnight Rider News Publications at midnightridernews.com. That's writer with a W. Not a passenger on a horse, but one who commits language to paper. Midnight Writer, WRITER, news.com. This all-new issue, number 11, features a ton of articles from the realm of history and deep politics, such as John Brisson introducing us to the Finders, Ed Tatro on Lyndon Johnson and the Silver Star scam, William Weston on the CIA and the Texas School Book Depository, Jefferson Morley on Greenwald, Trump, and the JFK files, and of course our friend Larry Hancock on the RFK assassination. Also, Midnight Rider News founder S.T. Patrick on the independence of Tulsi Gabbard, and much, much, much more. That's issue number 11 of Garrison, the Journal of History and Deep Politics, from Midnight Rider News Publications, available at midnightridernews.com as of October 14th. Order your copy now. Go on, get. And we are back. It's the gold standard in JFK assassination study and research information, not brought to you by Coke Zero in any way, shape, form, or fashion, not even a little bit. Mr. Rob, sir.
Yes, Doug.
I would like to share an article with you and the listeners, my friend, if I may.
Well, please do. I'm all ears.
Excellent. Excellent. This is an article while researching for and putting together the most recent episode of the Dallas Action, dude, number 198, in which our friend Ted Rubenstein joined me along with New Orleans historian and journalist H.L. Arledge of BayouJustice.com, who has a new book out, by the way, Phoenix, with the Dirty Phoenix, Birth of the Dixie Mafia. I plan on ordering that very, very soon. This article that we talked about in 198 of the Dallas Action. And I also posed two questions to those guys, questions posed by the author here, a guy named Nicholson Baker, in the article itself. And we didn't really share much of it. I just a couple of excerpts, but I'd like to share even more of the article here. Get your thoughts along the way, Rob. But more importantly, the two questions specifically asked in the article I want to put to you and get your take on them. Cool?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Now, this is from the website thebaffler.com, and it was published on July 14th of 2014, written, like I said, by Nicholson Baker. The article is titled The Dallas Killers Club. It's a long article, so I'm just going to share a few excerpts. It starts like this. There were three horrible public executions in 1963. The first, February, when the Prime Minister of Iraq was shot by members of the Ba'ath Party, to which the United States had furnished money and training. The second execution came in early November 1963. The president in Vietnam was shot in the back of the head and stabbed with a bayonet in a coup that was encouraged and monitored by the United States. President Kennedy was shocked at the news of Diem's gruesome murder. Quote, "I feel we must bear a good deal of responsibility for it." He said, "I should never have given my consent to it." I've never read or never heard that Kennedy gave his consent to the murder of Diem. Have you?
No, I have not. I believe that's something that that he was pissed off that if we were behind it, that the CIA had done without his knowledge or permission. But
yeah, I don't know about
again,
that.
I'm not sure who killed him.
Yeah, I don't know a terribly lot about that whole thing, and I don't pretend to. I
know somebody who does.
Oh man, that's a long list. That's a long list. But
he wears sweatpants and Velcro shoes. We could give him a call.
Yes, which is fashion faux pas, if you ask me. And a third, of course, being the murder of President Kennedy that he's writing about. Mr. Baker says in the article that he was 6 years old when it happened. I want to share this part. I was 6. I wasn't in school because we were moving to a new house with an ivy-covered tree in front. My mother told me that somebody had tried to kill the president who was in the hospital. I asked how. She said that a bullet had hit the president's head, injuring his brain. I asked why. She said she didn't know. I sat on a patch of carpeting in an empty room, believing that the president would get better because doctors are good and wounds heal. A little while later, I learned that no, the president was dead. Since that day, till very recently, I've avoided thinking about this third assassination. Anytime I saw the words Lee Harvey Oswald or Grassy Knoll or Jack Ruby, my mind quickly skipped away to other things. I didn't go see Oliver Stone's JFK. I didn't read DeLillo's Libra or Gaten Fonzie's The Last Investigation or even Posner's Case Closed or any of the dozens of mass market paperbacks, many of them with lurid covers and red titles. Now, that is not an inaccurate generalization, that part, that I saw reviewed, blamed, and praised. He goes on, Rob. Who or what brought this appalling crime into being? Was it a mentally unstable ex-Marine aiming down the back of Kennedy's head through leafy foliage, all by himself with no help? No. Baker writes, the convergent gunfire leads one to conclude that the shooting had to have been a group effort of some kind, a pre-planned, coordinated crossfire, a conspiracy. Right on, Mr. Baker. But if it was a group effort, what affiliation united the participants? Did the CIA and its hyper-militaristic Confederates, Cold War bitter enders, engineer it? That's what Mark Lane, James DiEugenio, Gerald McKnight, and many other sincere, brave, longtime students of the assassination believe. Kennedy was removed from office by powerful and irrational forces who opposed his revisionist Cuban policy. I am of the opinion that the conspiracy was born out of the Cuban situation. What about you, Rob? One way or another?
Yes, I agree.
Excuse me, Coke Zero sip. Had to be done. Let's see, where am I at? In my, let's see.
Born out of the Cuban whatever.
Born out of the Cuban whatever?
That was the last thing he read.
Yeah. The Cuban whatever. No, I'm just looking at my notes here because I started ad-libbing, and now I got to go back to where I don't ad-lib anymore. Yeah. Mr. Baker writes, quote, but eventually you have to face up to it somehow. Right? Says he's talking about Gerald McKnight's book, Breach of Trust, a closely researched book about the blind spots and truth twisting of the Warren Commission. James Douglas argues that Kennedy was killed by the, quote, unspeakable, unquote, a term from Thomas Merton that Douglas uses to describe a loose confederacy of nefarious plotters who opposed Kennedy's turn toward reconciliatory back-channel negotiation. President Kennedy was murdered by a conspiracy that was planned in advance at the highest levels of our government, and it was carried out by fanatical and disciplined Cold Warriors in the Pentagon and CIA's covert apparatus. That's the... He's not saying... Baker's not saying that. Nicholson Baker, that's not his outlook. That's how he's describing the James Douglas, unspeakable, I guess, what we call the vast consensus view of CIA primacy. The big vast conspiracy, which I think he's right. That section of the research community, a great many people who say that James Douglas's book was the best one ever written on the assassination who haven't actually read the book.
Great.
Yeah. They say that because other people have told them that,
Yes.
Yeah. Now, is that an unfair generalization on my part?
No. It's a good book, but it's not the best book on the assassination by any stretch of the imagination.
No. I would be hard-pressed to name a best book on the assassination.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. At least in my view, not yet anyway, until, while most books claim to have all the answers for you, it generally is not that simple.
No. As far as just enjoyment of reading a book that's fun to read, DeLillo's Libra that is mentioned in this article. That is a fun read, man. It's a great book. I recently reread it again over a weekend. And I just it's just a great book. I mean, whatever you think of his plot devices in that book, it doesn't matter. It's a great book. What a fun read.
Agreed.
Yeah. Back to Mr. Baker here. Mr. Baker writes, no question that the CIA's leading lights have for 50 years distorted and limited the available public record of the Kennedy assassination, doing whatever they could to distance the agency from its demonstrable interest in the accused killer, Oswald. And that is 100% right. Now, again, no question the CIA's leading lights have for 50 years distorted and limited the available public record on the Kennedy assassination, doing whatever they could to distance the agency from its demonstrable interest in the accused killer, Oswald. I agree with that 100%, Rob, because they have done that, because it's a cover-your-ass move, but not because the upper echelons of the CIA engineered the assassination.
Correct.
Right. He writes, it's also true, I think, that there were some CIA extremists, including William Harvey, who were secretly relieved that Kennedy was shot and may have even known in advance that he was probably going to die down south. What do you think?
That's probably a fair statement.
Yep. He writes, we are in debt to the CIA blamers for their 5 decades of work, often in the face of choreographed media smears. They have brought us closer to the truth. I believe, Baker writes, with full consciousness that I'm only a newcomer, that they're barking up the wrong conspiracy. I think it was a mafia hit. Kennedy's death would not have happened without Carlos Marcello. Thoughts, sir?
And here we go into mafia land, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's just another one of the theories out there, one of the many theories. Whether it be the mafia was behind it, whether it be it was a lone gunman, whether it was the rich oil people or whatever the case may be. Um, I know where you're going with this, so just pray continue, and
Yeah.
then we'll discuss more. Yeah.
Well, at this point in the article, it's a really long article. He goes on to lay out, some evidence, a lot of it familiar to folks who have studied this for a while. Dealing with Carlos Marcello, who Baker thinks is the key figure. He hits many points that we know, including Bobby Kennedy's apparent suspicions. Like right here, quote, once, when friend and speechwriter Richard Goodwin, who had worked closely with JFK, asked Bobby what he really thought, Bobby replied, if anyone was involved, it was organized crime. To Arthur Schlesinger, Bobby was, according to biographer Jack Newfield, even more specific, ascribing the murder to that guy in New Orleans, Carlos Marcello. Bobby Kennedy exclaimed on looking over the record of Ruby's pre-assassination phone calls, the list was almost a duplicate of the people I called before the Rackets Committee. And guys, the last episode of the Dallas Action with H.O. Arledge and Ted Rubenstein was 2 hours on this very topic, the list of Ruby's pre-assassination phone calls. Baker adds here, Rob, that Ronald Goldfarb, who worked for Bobby Kennedy's Justice Department, wrote in 1995, excuse me, there is a haunting credibility to the theory that our organized crime drive prompted a plan to strike back at the Kennedy brothers. Baker then lays out allegations regarding Carlos Marcello and the assassination, the story of Ed Becker. 1962, there was a meeting at Churchill Farms where Carlos Marcello said basically that he said, I'm going to get the stone out of my shoes. The Kennedys, cut off the head, not the tail, and get a nut to do it. Like get some crazy nut to take the fall. And
he was going to bust a nut doing it.
Well, but yeah, that's what he said. You know the story about the Churchill Farms meeting.
I do.
Yeah. And of course, the most intriguing to me, he mentions, is the connection between Oswald and Ferry and Marcello. When at the very moment that President Kennedy was killed, David Ferry is in a courtroom in New Orleans as part of he was an investigator for Carlos Marcello's attorney, G. Ray Gill. And Marcello was actually on trial in New Orleans at the time. So, he goes over that. Where Ferry was when Kennedy was getting shot. And he mentions, that in 1980, both Giancana and Rosselli were dead, but Marcello and Travacani were still alive. And he goes into the Frank Regano story, of course, that Travacani said Carlos fucked up. He should have killed Giovanni. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
According to Frank Regano, that's what mob boss Santo Travacanti, who was the last one, I guess, to either not end up in prison or, whacked out of that whole bunch. And the alleged taped confession to his cellmate, which is still partially redacted. And he coins a new phrase for those who adhere to the vast consensus view of CIA primacy, Rob. The unspeakables. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to put it.
I kind of dig
unspeakable. It. Yeah, I do. I like that.
He goes on here. I'll wrap this up. The mafia explanation, the unspeakables think, is no more than a convenient blame-shifting distraction, a false sponsor, pushed on the public by the CIA to divert attention away from a much bigger plot that originated deep within the hard right invisible covert government. And to a limited degree, of course, they're right. The CIA is an opportunistic fungus. And its apologists have often used the practice of, quote, limited hangout, unquote, to shield from public view its history of murdered screw-ups. Amen. The post-Garrisonites, Baker continues, very much want Kennedy's death to be real martyrdom based on principles. The result of a 7 days in May sort of national security state power grab, not merely sordid gangland slaying. It couldn't be that JFK died because his hot-headed crusading brother was obsessed with shutting down strip clubs, slot machines, and bookie wires. No. The president died as a heroic consequence of his quiet peace overtures and his professed desire to get out of Vietnam. You can sense this sometimes in James D. Eugenio's fierce attacks on Lamar Waldron's books. The Mafia is the new patsy. And here come the questions, Rob. But it seems pretty clear that Oswald is the patsy, just as he said he was. Maybe the way to think about the whole thing is to ask yourself two questions. All right, Rob, you ready? If there had been a CIA but no mafia, would the president have lived through the motorcade? If there had been a mafia but no CIA, would the president have lived? Interesting
questions.
Yes, very. If there had been a CIA and no mafia,
here's the thing.
Does he live to get to the other side of the triple overpass?
For all of its accomplishments, in quotes, if you want to call them that the CIA has had over the years, I wouldn't say that assassination is one of the CIA's strong suits.
No.
That we know about, i.e., see Fidel Castro living to the ripe old age of 95 or whatever he was.
Never have so many failed so much repeatedly at one thing. Never.
And again, I think Fidel Castro fucked over the mafia way harder than the Kennedy brothers. And again, they were enlisted to help kill Fidel Castro as well. And here's a spoiler alert: they didn't succeed either. So
yeah,
and you can point to things on both sides, whether it's the CIA or the mafia. That the Kennedys were going after both of them for different reasons, and you could see where it would piss both the mafia and the CIA off. Is it to the point where one of these entities would go to the extreme of murdering the president in broad daylight in the middle of the street in front of hundreds of witnesses? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, this doesn't scream to me a mafia hit. Most mafioso like things up close and personal. I don't see a lot of mafia snipers, or you don't hear about mafia snipers. And again, you're talking about the CIA primacy thing. This is not something that the CIA as an official entity would ever sanction. The murder of a sitting president in broad daylight in front of hundreds of people. With anybody that could be tied back to them at all. So I don't think either one is to blame for this, and it doesn't really matter to me if one existed and one didn't, would the assassination have still taken place. If you want to break it down, like the bare bones, I would say that the assassination, and like I've always said, whoever pulled that trigger in Dealey Plaza on November the 22nd, 1963, whoever took that kill shot to blow Kennedy's head off, was either paid very handsomely to do so
Yep.
and had done it before, and had no qualms about it whatsoever, and had no fear that he would be caught or tried or anything for this, which means that there would have been a very, very good plan in place. Or the person that pulled that trigger was very ideologically opposed to Kennedy for whatever reason, which means that he hated this man so much that he would have done this for free. Didn't matter if he got caught, didn't matter if he got away. That this was just something that he felt needed to be done to make the world right again, or he felt so wronged for whatever reason that pulling the trigger and killing this man was justified in his own mind. And so for me, I guess, it's hard to say. I mean, you can look at both sides and say this and say that, but very interesting article. Gives you a lot to think about for sure.
You know where I think I'm at with the whole thing? At this point in my thinking is those two questions. I'm thinking that because I believe that, like we said before, the assassination plot sprang from anti-Castro operations, right? And
Right.
there's a certain clique, a certain subset, nexus. Ted likes to use the word nexus of a crossover between the mafia, these anti-Castro operators, the paramilitary guys, the Cuban exiles themselves, and the mercenaries, and the CIA, and 1, 2, 3 at the most CIA covert ops personnel who had specialized knowledge that the plotters had to have had not only to pull the operation off, but to frame Oswald. And it's somewhere in that nexus, right? So I think that as far as these questions go, my answer would be because both existed, Kennedy died. Had either one not existed, then the plot would not have happened.
Agreed, because then this whole thing would have fallen into the lap of a military operation at that point against Cuba. It would have been military intelligence, military action. You would take the whole civilian element out of the deal.
Yeah.
But you would still have anti-Castro Cubans. But you would not have the factions who felt that it was their duty and responsibility to do something about it, because nobody was doing anything about it. So again, that would put this somewhere in the realm of Kennedy being responsible for his own death because he chose not to involve the military in removing Fidel Castro from power. So,
yeah,
interesting either way.
I might be able to narrow it down even further. Had the CIA's had either the mafia not existed or CIA's JM Wave operations, little world, not existed. Had either one of those things not existed, Kennedy would have lived through the motorcade. You know what I'm saying? But because they both did exist, he died in the motorcade. Would be my opinion there. I just think that there's a soup, there's a poisonous porridge concoction of mafia-connected guys and anti-Castro operations based in the southern U.S., we'll say, that resulted in all of this. But again, you have to have one of those guys. You have to have somebody in CIA with this specialized knowledge that they would have to make the frame up in the murder work. Whoever did it had to have their help, and I think he's right here. I think Bill Harvey is definitely one of those suspects.
Yeah, and
I
again,
agree.
Jack Ruby's involvement in killing Oswald is a giant fucking beacon of, hey, this guy is involved either with the mafia, and he's acting on orders from the mafia to do what he did, or Jack Ruby's some secret CIA fucking double agent turncoat fucking gun runner that we know nothing about, that we have no official paperwork or documentation on. And when you're looking at who he was talking to before the assassination, and who where he grew up and his lifestyle and what the business that he were in and what he was doing, how he lived his life, it you can definitely scream mafia connected at some point with Ruby, and that's where that points for me. And I think somebody ordered Ruby to do what he did, because things went a little sideways in Dallas, and he had to. So
yeah, man, I'm with you. People that say, well, the mafia is just the new patsy, I don't know how they can say that when you look at the fact that who the hell killed Oswald? It was a mob hit.
Yeah, you can't overlook that at all.
No, no. I mean, it wasn't. No. The dude was wearing a fedora. Come on, Jack Ruby. He couldn't be made. It's like we said last in the last show. He couldn't be made because he was Jewish, but he was definitely an associate. 100%. But
yes.
Yeah, but cool. I just wanted to get your take on all that, sir. I found it very interesting.
No, it's fascinating article. Fascinating.
Absolutely.
All right, Doug. I got some. I came across a very old publication, and I wanted to go over with you today because when you see all these statements together, it paints a very different picture of what happened in Dealey Plaza that day. And this comes from Michael T. Griffith's book.
Awesome.
And
you know what, man? We talk a lot about we do a lot of a lot of sort of news items in our world and document study on this show. I think that revisiting past scholarship is something we should definitely do on a more regular basis. Yeah,
totally. I dig it. And this is from 1997. So we're looking at 25 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a researcher's insight into the assassination and how they correlated things and kind of how they came to conclusions. So, and this is from chapter 2, like I said, of Michael T. Griffith's book. I don't know I don't have the title of the book, but I know that he wrote more than one. So feel free to look it up if you want to find it. And this is from chapter 2 again, entitled "The Grassy Knoll and Shots from the Front." Because the House Select Committee on Assassinations formally concluded at least one shot was fired at President Kennedy from the Grassy Knoll area. The Grassy Knoll was to the right front of the limousine during the shooting. It was on the north side of Elm Street, which was the street on which the limousine was traveling when the assassination occurred. The committee judged as credible the accounts of numerous witnesses in Dealey Plaza who said they heard shots fired from in front of the limousine. Most of these witnesses said shots came from behind the picket fence on the knoll, while others said shots came from the far west end of the knoll next to the triple underpass.
Right.
So if the Kennedy assassination had been any ordinary murder case, the eyewitness testimony of shots from the front would have been immediately recognized as credible and important. But the Warren Commission rejected this testimony because it was committed to its lone gunman theory. The commission said the witnesses were mistaken, and it ignored or arbitrarily dismissed the other indications of gunfire from the front. But let us now take a brief look at some of the evidence that has convinced so many people that shots were indeed fired at the president from the front.
Cool.
So, and so this little section is entitled "Suspicious Events on the Knoll Prior to the Shooting," and I just did a whole show on Lee Bowers, who was in his little Bowers Tower in the parking lot of the railroad yard there behind the Grassy Knoll area.
Yeah.
And he had an excellent view of the area behind the Grassy Knoll. He was positioned in a 14-foot railroad tower that was located behind the parking lot to the rear of the knoll. Bowers told the Warrant Commission that 3 cars entered the parking lot behind the knoll about a half an hour before the shooting. The first vehicle, he said, proceeded in front of the school book depository down across 2 or 3 tracks and circled the area in front of the tower. And as if he was searching for a way out or was checking the area, and then proceeded back through the only way he could, the same outlet he came into. The car, said Bowers, was a 59 Oldsmobile station wagon with an out-of-state license tag. It bore a Goldwater for President bumper sticker, so presumably it was not a federal car of any kind. The second vehicle to enter the parking lot behind the knoll was a 57 Ford that was driven by a man who appeared to be holding some kind of microphone up to his mouth. The Ford probed a little further into the area than the first car, and after 3 or 4 minutes of cruising around, the vehicle departed the same way the first car had left. The third vehicle, said Bowers, entered the parking lot no more than 9 minutes before the shooting. It too bore a Goldwater campaign sticker, and it had the same type of out-of-state license tag as the first car. Bowers testified that the third car spent a little more time in the area before leaving. The area between the tower and Elm Street was cut off as of 10 o'clock that morning. How then did these cars manage to cruise around the parking lot behind the knoll? And what were they doing there? Who were the drivers? It is certainly not illogical to suggest that the drivers were scouts for the sniper team on the knoll, and that they were making sure the escape routes were clear.
Especially when you consider the microphone that he's using there.
Yeah. Bowers also said he saw 2 men standing near the fence on the knoll minutes before the shots were fired. He said one of the men was younger and wearing a plaid shirt or coat. He describes the other man as a heavy-set and middle-aged man, which matches Doug from the first article I read, Who Was the Man in Blue coveralls.
Yes, it does, the blue coveralls.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
And next up, they go through Julie Ann Mercer's encounter. She was driving west on Elm Street. She got stuck in traffic about a half an hour before the shooting, suggested because a green Ford pickup truck had illegally parked in the lane on the right. This vehicle was half on the street and half on the sidewalks, and Miss Mercer pulled up behind the truck and stopped as she waited to pull out and pass. While she was waiting to pass, she saw a man at the back of the truck take what appeared to be a brown rifle case, which she described in considerable detail, from the tool compartment of the truck and walk up the knoll. The man, she said, was white and wearing a gray jacket, brown pants, plaid shirt. He was also wearing a stocking-type hat. As she drove around the truck, she took a look at the driver. He was, she reported, a heavy-set white man with brown hair and blue jacket.
There we go.
So again,
a big guy wearing blue.
Yeah, and also another man wearing a plaid, either jacket or shirt.
Yep. Matches
what Bowers saw. So, realizing the implications of Mercer's account, the Warrant Commission supporters have sought to discredit it. In so doing, they face a difficult task. Yes.
How can it like a detective or an investigator who's even halfway honest not notice how all that lines up? How this lady's corroborating this guy. We need to be searching. I just don't. It was all rigged from the damn beginning.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a good investigator to piece these things together and see how they do fit together. Either they were all dumb enough, or they didn't, or they kept these accounts far separated from each other. So, realizing the implications of Mercer's account, I don't know. Miss Mercer reported her story to the sheriff's department within hours of the shooting. She had no conceivable motive to lie, was a person of good character, and gave a clear, detailed account of what she saw. Additionally, her description of the two men in the truck resembled the description of the two men seen by Bowers standing near the fence on the knoll later. Both Mercer and Bowers described two males, one heavy-set, middle-aged, the other younger, and both said the younger man was wearing a plaid shirt or coat, which is what we just said, right, Doug?
Oh, yeah.
So, in an obvious but flimsy attempt to discredit Mercer's account, the FBI produced a questionable statement taken from Patrolman Joe Murphy, who was allegedly one of the three officers whom Miss Mercer saw on the triple underpass while she was stopped behind the truck. Murphy's statement wasn't filed until 17 days later. Why the delay? Murphy contradicted himself and vouched for things he could not have seen. Conveniently, Murphy claimed he was, quote, unable to recall the name of the company for whom the men in the truck supposedly worked. He did say, however, that they were working on the First National Bank at the time. Neither the Dallas police nor the FBI bothered to call the bank to find out the name of the alleged company. Such information could have been easily obtained and would have enabled authorities to corroborate Murphy's story. Once they had learned the name of the company, the FBI then could have obtained the names, the addresses, and phone numbers of the men Murphy said were in the truck. And Miss Mercer's story could have been destroyed once and for all had the men proved genuine. But no inquiries were made. As British scholar Matthew Smith points out that this never happened, would seem to dispose of the FBI report, which raises more questions than it answers, and strengthens Miss Mercer's claims. Furthermore, why didn't the police or FBI produce statements from the other two patrolmen who were with Murphy on the overpass? Surely one of these two policemen would have noticed Murphy doing at least some of the things that he claimed he did in his belatedly filed FBI statement. If one or both of these officers had corroborated even just a few parts of Murphy's statement, that would have made his claims seem more credible, but this never happened either. So now we move on to some of the witnesses, Doug.
Yes,
and
sir.
The first one we're going to talk about is Abraham Zapruder, who, of course, is famous for taking his film.
Very notable name. Very notable name.
Yes. So Zapruder was standing on the knoll itself and made the famous home movie of the assassination called the Zapruder film. He told the Secret Service on the day of the shooting that the assassin had fired from behind him. During his Warren Commission testimony, Zapruder was prepared to reveal evidence that there was more than one gunman, but incredibly, the commission lawyer who was questioning him, Wesley Liebler, refused to pursue the matter. Said Zapruder, they claim it was proven it could be done by one man. You know there was an indication that there were two, right? And what was Liebler's response to this tantalizing statement given by Zapruder? He said, your films were extremely helpful to the work of the commission, Mr. Zapruder. So,
Oh, man, dude. I remember talking to Walt Brown one time, and it may have been Zapruder that he was talking about. I can't quite remember, but he was telling me about when a witness in Dealey Plaza, they were questioning him, right? And he told this story later. I think maybe to Walt Brown, but it wouldn't have been Zapruder, I don't think, if Walt actually talked to him. I don't know. I can't remember the name, but the witness said he heard 4 to 5 shots, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and they stopped the questioning, and Liebler's like. And then they started, like going off the record, stop, and they started drilling into him 3 shots. Look, we've only got 3 bullets, okay? We've got these 3 shells, right? That were found in the floor. All right? So now we're going to go back on the record, and we're going to ask you again, okay? And the witness said, okay. So Liebler goes, okay, we're back on the record now. How many shots were there? And the witness says, 2 to 3 more than I heard. I wish I could remember who that witness was.
Well, it might be in here. We might get to it.
Okay, cool.
So Zapruder said one of the shots caused reverberations all around him and was louder than the others. The HSCA noted that this description was more consistent with a shot that had been fired from nearby, i.e., from the knoll to the rear of the Zapruder position, than with a shot from the school book depository.
Right.
So one shot, James Tague, was standing near the triple underpass and was in excellent position to hear the shots. Not to mention he got hit by something. Tague stated he heard shots from the grassy knoll. When counsel suggested he might have heard echoes, he said, "There was no echo from where I stood. I was asked this question before, and there was no echo, period." Gene Hill was standing on the south side of Elm Street and had an excellent view of the limousine and the grassy knoll in the background. Hill was within 50 feet of the limo when the fatal headshot struck. He gave 3 interviews to reporters within hours of the shooting. The shots, she said, less than an hour after the assassination, came from the hill. It was just east of the underpass, and she made it clear that she had heard more than 3 shots. However, in what was to become a familiar pattern, Mrs. Hill's FBI statement taken later that day mentioned none of this. As Richard Trask has correctly observed, the FBI statement reflected little of what Hill had told national television. The statement said nothing about 4 or more shots, nor did it say anything about gunfire from the knoll. Paul Landis was the Secret Service agent and was riding in the Queen Mary follow-up car. He stated that when the president was shot in the head, his impression was, quote, "The shot came from somewhere towards the front, along the right-hand side of the road." This is from a Secret Service agent in the follow-up car now. Paul Landis. Charles Brim was standing on the south side of Elm Street and was behind and to the left of the limo when the fatal headshot occurred, and Brim told newsmen on November 22nd that, quote, "The shots came from in front or beside the president."
There you go.
Forrest Sorrells, another Secret Service agent, actually head of the Dallas Secret Service.
Yep, good friend of golfing buddy of Orville Nix as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was traveling in the lead car, and his first account of the shooting, he said the shot seemed to have come from the terrace on the grassy knoll. Bill Newman was standing at the base of the grassy knoll and was therefore between the knoll and the limo. At the time of the shooting, Newman said the shots came from behind him. Gail Newman, wife of Bill Newman, she said the shots came from behind her. Mary Woodward, she was to the left front of the grassy knoll. She said the shots came from, quote, "behind us and a little to the right," which would have been the knoll. Maggie Brown, she too was standing to the left front of the knoll with Mary Woodward. The shots, she said, came from behind and to her right from the knoll. Jean Newman was standing between the Stemmons Freeway sign on Elm Street and the school book depository, and she said, "The first impression I had was the shots came from my right rear." The grassy knoll was on her right rear. Aurelia Lorenzo, like Brown and Woodward, was standing to the left front of the knoll. She said shots came from a point to her right rear. John Chisholm was standing beneath a freeway sign on Elm Street with the grassy knoll behind him, and he said when shots rang out, "I looked behind me." Mary Chisholm, wife of John Chisholm, the gunfire, she said, came from what I thought was behind us. Billy Lovelady was standing on the front steps of the school book depository. He said sounds of shots came from right there around that concrete little deal on the knoll. He said he told the FBI that he did not at any time believe the shots had come from the school book depository. End quote. A.J. Milliken had been standing in front of the colonnade on the other side of Elm Street from the school book depository. He said he heard 5 shots come from the area between the triple underpass and the school book depository.
That's a new name to me. I've never heard of that witness, A.J. Milliken.
Yeah. Sam Holland, S.M. Holland, was standing on the parapet of the railway bridge that overlooked Elm Street. He said he was positive shots came from behind the wooden fence on the grassy knoll. James Simmons. Simmons was on the triple underpass and was well positioned to hear the shots. Simmons said the sounds of the shots came from, quote, the left, and in front of us towards the wooden fence on the knoll. Richard Dodd was also standing on the triple underpass. Dodd said he heard shots come from the grassy knoll. Lee Bowers, during the shooting, his attention was drawn to the area near the fence where he had seen the two men standing and reported there was a, quote, flash of light or smoke or something that caused him to look at that spot. James Crawford, standing near the schoolbook depository on the day of the shooting, Crawford believed the shots came from down the hill toward the underpass. Mrs. Avery Davis, a schoolbook depository employee, said the shots were, quote, fired from the viaduct, i.e. from the triple underpass area, which again was next to the knoll.
Yep.
O.V. Campbell, a TSBD employee, said, quote, I heard shots being fired from a point which I thought was near the railroad tracks located over the viaduct on Elm Street. Danny Arce, a schoolbook depository employee, told the Warren Commission, quote, I thought the shots came from the railroad tracks to the west of the schoolbook depository. Ron Boone, a deputy sheriff, searched the area behind the fence on the knoll a minute or two after the shooting because, quote, several witnesses had told him the shots had been fired from that location. J.C. Price watched the motorcade from the roof of the terminal annex building. He said the shots came from behind the picket fence where it joins the underpass. Seymour Weitzman.
Over and over again.
Yeah. Seymour Weitzman was a deputy sheriff and was in Dealey Plaza at the time of the shooting. As he was running up the knoll moments after the shots rang out, a bystander told him that, quote, a firecracker or shot had come from the other side of the fence. Weitzman then jumped over the fence into the parking lot where a railroad worker told him that the source of the gunfire was the wall section where there was a bunch of shrubbery.
Which would have been the top of the grassy knoll at the picket fence.
Yeah. Kenny O'Donnell, a close friend and aide of Kennedy. O'Donnell was seated in the follow-up car. He told former Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill during a private dinner that he was sure that he had heard, quote, 2 shots that came from behind the fence on the knoll. Okay. Dave Powers, like Kenny O'Donnell, was an aide to Kennedy and seated in the follow-up car. And during the above-mentioned dinner with Speaker of the House O'Neill, Powers confirmed O'Donnell's account of shots from the knoll. Chief Jesse Curry was the chief of the Dallas Police Department. Curry stated in his famous book on the assassination that he believed one of the shots came from in front of the limousine.
Yes, he did.
So, when you put all this stuff together, and you hear it one after the other.
That's a giant stack of eyewitnesses telling you something. The same thing. How do you ignore that, man?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's just disingenuous not to take all of this shit into consideration when you have so many witnesses who were there in the plaza telling you what they saw and heard, and to just dismiss it like the Warren Commission did is just it's beyond ludicrous.
It's one thing what the Warren Commission did. That was almost 60 years ago, and we know what their motivations were. They had to frame this lone assassin. The Warren Commission was there to close doors. I think what's more even shameful are the people today that can look at that stack of witnesses and say, all those people are wrong. Arlen Specter was fucking right.
Exactly.
Though that's the shame. Yeah, that's where you go, what the fuck? What are you thinking?
Yeah, there are still lone nut supporters who want to crucify Oswald and claim the Warren Commission got it right. How can you just ignore what I just read? How can you can maybe say, okay, 1 or 2 of them might have been mistaken. But goddamn, man, I mean, that's like 30 fucking people who were there, who all heard and saw the same thing.
It's a damn shame. You're exactly right. All these people who saw, witnessed, and reported the same thing that they saw and witnessed in the same instant, right? Whether you work for MSNBC or whether you're some old hippie that loves to troll JFK groups on Facebook and join them to defend the Warren Commission, it's inconceivable to me that you just ignore that shit and go, all those witnesses were wrong or they're lying, and Arlen Specter was right. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to fucking hear it.
Well, that's it for that one, Doug.
Shameful.
It is.
Hey, I got something else shameful. Let me hit this Coke Zero real quick before we do emails, Rob. Hang on. I know we do have some emails, right?
Oh, we do. We do
right,
have some emails. Right. I got one more thing after yours I want to touch on before we get to the emails too. So
okay.
Since this is our anniversary go home show.
Yeah, for real. This time next week we'll still be recovering from all of the turkey and all of the green beans. Yeah. Real fast, before we get to your last topic in emails, I want to take just a minute to remove some mud in the water again. All right? Dismiss a tenacious piece of conspiracy butt fluff that is regularly propagated, spread by author David Talbot again. All right, guys. It's a third-hand tale when he got it. 18 years old third-hand tale. It's provably false. Ridiculously easy to do so. It's misleading. It's nonsense. And Mr. Talbot keeps insisting that it is fact and spreading it around as such, as fact. All right? First, hey, Momo, be ready with the soundbite marked Talbot. I want to play you guys a soundbite of Mr. David Talbot's recent appearance on Black Op Radio, Rob, or BOR. David Talbot's recent appearance on BOR, uploaded on November 10th of this year. Cool? All right, here's David Talbot.
Yes, sir.
So that...
Yeah, one of the things that I was blocked by the CIA when I was doing my research on the book, one of the things I wanted was the travel records of William Harvey. Harvey worked directly under Dulles at the CIA. It was in charge of the Black Ops and the assassinations for Allen Dulles. He carried out or tried to carry out the assassination of Patrice Lumumba in Africa and other progressive leaders. They brought home that killing team, I believe, to kill President Kennedy. So William Harvey was spotted, and later his deputy, he was supposedly at their own CIA station where he'd been put by Angleton and Helms, two CIA officials, to save the ass, basically, because Bobby Kennedy was after him. He's reportedly on a plane from Rome to Dallas in the days before the Kennedy assassination. Why the hell was a CIA guy who was in charge of assassinations flying from Rome to Dallas in the days before November 22nd? I wanted those travel records. I wanted to prove that he indeed, this is Harvey, was on that airplane, as his deputy, Mark Wyatt, said. They blocked
For
that.
anyone who doesn't know about that conversation, do you want to just recount that?
Well, Wyatt talked later to Harvey that day of the assassination, and he got very drunk, Harvey, and said things that implicated him in the assassination of President Kennedy. I believe that he arranged for the shooters who were in Dallas that day who killed the president. So it was a CIA operation, but it was delegated to people who could carry out the crime. And Allen Dulles, of course, had his fingers clean and was involved in the actual murder. But he delegated that to Bill Harvey, I believe, who was in charge of assassinations for the agency, for the CIA. So that is a relevant record. What were his travel records? Was he on a plane flying from Rome to Dallas in the days before the assassination? The American people have a right to that document. And the CIA said, no, we can't release it for national security.
Ladies and gentlemen, in 1963, CIA's William Harvey was never on a plane from Rome to Dallas. William Harvey was not seen by Mark Wyatt on a flight from Rome to Dallas in 1963 because a flight from Rome to Dallas in 1963 did not exist. It's bullshit. Dismiss it. All right? In 1963, there was one only one single solitary flight that originated in a foreign country that actually went to and landed in Dallas, Texas, and that was to and from Mexico City. Ladies and gentlemen, there was no such thing as a flight from Rome to Dallas or from Dallas to Rome. It didn't happen. That research, Rob, is from Larry Hancock. He verified that. He verified this.
Are you sure they didn't refuel in midair or something?
They did not, sir.
And a passenger jet, a commercial passenger jet, they didn't refuel in midair?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
They might have because Bill Harvey was on it.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe he called in, Strategic Air Command to fuel up his Eastern Airlines plane.
Yeah.
Guys, Larry Hancock did that bit of research. He verified that. There was no such thing as a flight from Rome to Dallas in 1963. The only place you could get on a plane in a foreign city and land in Dallas, Texas was Mexico City and vice versa. That's it. All right? It didn't exist. 2, now this next part is research by me, but it was peer-reviewed and authenticated and all that stuff deemed to be correct by Mr. Hancock, Rob, several years ago when this first came up, okay? 2, the distance from Rome, Italy to Dallas, Texas is 5,614 nautical miles, Rob. The
Lord.
Yeah, 5,614 nautical miles. That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
The transoceanic aircraft that existed on planet Earth capable of the longest flight, the aircraft with the longest range of any other commercial airliner in the world, was in 1963 the Boeing 707-320B. And the Boeing 707-320B had a maximum range, an absolute maximum range, which means that at this point it would burn its last drop of fuel of 5,000 nautical miles. So not only was there no such thing as a flight from Rome to Dallas in 1963, it didn't exist. There was no such thing as a transoceanic airliner actually capable of a flight that damn far, even if they wanted to. All right? 2 things. To Mr. Talbot, I would say, just stop it. Just stop it. All right? And second, it's proof that, look, those other guys, they're interested in conspiracy buff legend. And nothing newer than 1998. Somebody send this to David Talbot. Somebody just send him the link and note the timestamp when I started and say, hey, buddy, you need to listen to this. Guys, now, I know what you're saying. Well, Doug, didn't you just say, oh, well, you like Harvey for being one of the CIA rogues? Absolutely. Well, then why are you picking on Dave? Look, there are way too many real, tangible connections, movements, associations, knowledge. There's way too much of that to seriously look at Harvey for the JFK assassination. There's plenty of it. All right? Plenty of it.
Much like the Lansdale allegations, I will put this out there as well. Whoever planned this probably wouldn't want to be anywhere near fucking Dallas, Texas on November the 22nd, 1963. Period. End of discussion.
And another thing Talbot gets wrong, the story about Wyatt's interaction with Harvey on November 22nd in 1963. Talbot said here in the sound clip that Harvey got drunk and then said things that implicated himself in the assassination, right? That's not how it happened. Harvey was passed out sleeping Wyatt woke him up, told him about the assassination, and what Harvey said was, or this is I don't know that he said it, it's confirmed, but this is what Wyatt said. He said, well, it was bound to happen. Maybe it's for the best. But suddenly Mr. Talbot says, oh, he implicated himself. I don't think so. But this, it's like the lands there. Like you said, Robbie, Harvey's not going to be anywhere near there. But even more so, there are real reasons to suspect and to look at and to research and to study Harvey without having to make shit up to do it.
Right.
Okay? Without having to rely on bullshit. Which, Doug, maybe it was a connecting flight. If it's a connecting flight, then he's not on no plane to Dallas. He's on a plane to Jersey or New York or Washington, D.C. or somewhere. So it's just don't even put that out of your mind, guys. Between Rosselli and Rosselli's entanglement in JM Wave and those entanglements with anti-Castro operators, where Harvey was and who Harvey was meeting with in April of 1963, not November, we know he was in Miami. We know that. There's no doubting that. Concentrate on what we know, because the implications of that trip are huge in relation to Kennedy assassination. We don't have to make up trips and then assign them false importance. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
We don't have to make up the Dallas trip. We've got the Miami trip, and that's damn implicating enough. All right? Don't worry about the Dallas trip. So, anyway, that's all I had on that, Rob. Just wanted to pass that along to everybody.
Yeah, and you asked the question, why is he still pushing this damn theory all these years later when he has been corrected and called out on this in the past? And the reason, Doug, is why so many researchers cling to their pet theories is they wrote it in a book, and they don't have the balls enough to say, you know what, I got it wrong, I screwed up, because that null and voids their entire masterpiece, epic, whatever they want to call it.
I know, man. There's another thing about that book that he wrote, The Devil's Chessboard. There's a photograph in there of him and LBJ, right? And he puts in the book, and there were people that were like, "Oh, it's shocking! Oh wow, look!" He put in the book, "Well, this is Dulles visiting LBJ in 1963, right?" And like the implication was they were plotting. Well, it took about a week after that book was published for, again, thankfully, Larry Hancock in the Education Forum to point out that no, that photograph was taken in 1959, and we've known it for years. I'll bet you that has not been corrected in the book. I'll bet if you ordered a new copy of The Devil's Chessboard, it's still labeled 1963 incorrectly. What do you want to bet? You want to bet a Coke Zero on that?
No, because I'd lose. So.
Yeah, okay. Anyway.
All right.
That's all I had, man. Back to you, sir.
Yeah, one final thing before we get to the emails, Doug. I came across some correspondence from a man by the name of Kevin Walsh in 1978 to Cliff Fenton, who was investigator in Dallas for the House Select Committee on Assassinations.
I've read lots of paperwork with Mr. Fenton's name on it.
Oh, yeah. I love it. And I know when I say the name, people are going to be like, "Oh God, here we go." This pertains to former Dallas policeman Roscoe White.
All right.
But bear in mind, this is way, 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 way before all the horse shit and horse assery of the early 90s with Ricky White and Geneva Dees and all this other crazy shit that was going on.
The Mandarin thing. See, now I'm like you. I think the earlier evidence and the earlier circumstantial evidence that came along pointing to White is maybe it may have more credibility to it than that. That seems like somebody, like a Baker thing, like capitalizing on shit that they read somewhere else kind of deal to me. But, you know, what do I know?
So, I mean, something that can't be denied is how Roscoe White, or Geneva White, I guess after he passed, came into possession of a third Oswald backyard photograph, a pose that had never, ever been seen before or published or is in any files.
Can't
or
ignore
anything.
that. Can't ignore that. He had that. He
Okay.
had this. Right.
Yeah. So this Kevin Walsh guy is writing Cliff Fitton this letter. And he says, Dear Cliff, it was good to sit down with you again, and per our discussion, this letter will provide details with respect to the areas of investigation I raised. While much of this has been gone over before and will be evaluated in light of what you may have discovered since my leaving the staff, I do believe it important you be advised of the following. Geneva Dees, widow, Dallas policeman Roscoe White. On December the 30th, 1976, I traveled with staff counsel Jonathan Blackmere to Paris, Texas, for the purpose of interviewing and collecting photographic materials. We interviewed Geneva Dees at length and provided her with an itemized receipt for the photographs and materials she submitted. 2 tape recorders were operating for most of the Dees interview, and those cassettes were made a part of the committee files. Jonathan was recording on the mini cassette and periodically turned his off. My recorder was on almost continually, and it was the standard 90-minute tapes. Among the photographs Mrs. D submitted was what is referred to as the third Oswald with guns photograph. This, she explained, was one of the many her late husband had smuggled out of the Dallas police photography lab mere days after the assassination. When asked if her husband had worked to develop them, she became unclear, saying it could have been in a private lab, but that he did get sent to the Oswald home, in quotes, in his capacity as plainclothes detective for the photography division of the Dallas Police Department.
Uh-huh.
Now, I believe that Oswald home, in quotes here, would be the Payne household, okay? Because that is where most of the incriminating photographic evidence came from.
Okay.
Allegedly. So, in the presence of one of her 2 sons, my best recollection is his name is and had once made composite photographs of the boys depicting them flying around the room. Ricky confirmed this story. While her son was out of the room, Mrs. D stated that her marriage to White was going badly prior to his death, and that both had been having extramarital affairs. She did name the woman White had been seeing, I don't recall the name, and went on that this woman had confronted her with the demand she give White a divorce, or she and White would produce a photograph showing Geneva in bed with another man. If you need further details on this, please advise. I don't recall much more that seems relevant at this time. And we'll get back to the Geneva Deeds things, but
Okay.
he then moves on to this point in the letter where he says, please recall my memo to you dated 7/26/77 entitled The Walker Bullet. That briefly addressed questions as to the recovered bullets inconsistently with Oswald's weapon. It went on to cite Warren Commission testimony by the Fords to the effect that Marina had been coached by her attorney, William McKenzie, to testify that Oswald had only used one gun in the attempt on Walker. I believed it should be a simple matter to determine whether the recovered bullet matches Oswald's rifle and expects those tests to have been done by now. The following may be of use to you in the way of pursuing previously undeveloped leads. Hopefully these will already be old business to you also. While visiting Dallas last January, I contacted Ira Van Cleve at the Crimes Against Persons Division of the Dallas Police Department. Officer Van Cleve now operates a polygraph and security consulting firm separate from his official duties. At the time of the attempt on Major Walker's life, Van Cleve was assigned to the investigation and quoted in the press to the effect that the recovered bullet had been fired from a .30-06 rifle. I asked him about this, and he stated the bullet had been too mangled for identification, and he had been misquoted in the press.
Uh-huh.
Officer Van Cleve did go on that there was a reliable witness to the Walker shooting, a young neighbor boy who saw two men in a car across an alleyway not
Right.
far, and he had a good view. This was apparently a reference to Walter Kirk Coleman,
Kurt
who
Coleman, yep.
Walker alleged in his Warren Commission testimony had been ordered by law enforcement personnel not to talk. Possibly relevant to this matter, but certainly one of those outstanding questions not satisfactorily dealt with by the Warren Commission is the rifle Robert Adrian Taylor reported he received in trade from a man resembling Oswald. Taylor described the rifle as a Springfield bolt-action 30-06 bearing the markings U.S. Rock Island Arsenal Model 1903 and bearing serial number 66091.
Well, I'll be damned.
Mission Exhibit 2977. Is there any assistance I can be to you regarding the above or any other areas I would be honored to help? Sincerely, Kevin Walsh. Okay? So that's interesting that allegedly this guy, Taylor, had come and he had traded a rifle with a man resembling Oswald, and it was a 30-06.
I wonder what the trade was for.
Great. Now, if it was a Arcano for a 30-06, would be interesting.
Wow. Isn't that interesting?
But, yeah.
Huh.
So, back to White. He states this additional points. During the period August to December of 63, Roscoe White was having an affair with a neighbor in Dallas. At the time, the neighbor, Helen, was employed by a large photographic concern in Dallas. White may have approached his wife requesting a divorce, which may have been denied or contested by Mrs. White. And at some point, Helen approached Mrs. White to, quote, use trick photography and make it appear as if Mrs. White's head were on else's body, probably in a pose in bed with another man, which is grounds for divorce in Texas. Mrs. Dees relates that her late husband was extremely adept at trick photography and had taken some trick shots of the children and made them appear to be flying around the room, which we already talked about. Mrs. White was herself having an extramarital affair at the time, probably with one Edward Glenn Walker, no relation to Edwin Walker.
So, let's see. Roscoe White was banging a chick that worked at a large photographic concern.
Yes.
Jagger Child Stovall, maybe?
Yeah. It's not mentioned in here, but interesting.
Yeah.
So some of these conclusions, he states, number one, Roscoe White had the means, the skill, and the access to have manipulated Oswald photos.
I can agree with that.
White preserved the evidence he gathered with the thought of making money from them in the future for his children. Number three, White was careful not to alert his fellow police officers of the facts that he had made copies of all this material. Number four, White was seeing someone that could have assisted him with the photography outside the lab White used.
Yep.
Number five, White was in a sense a rookie with the ambition to rise the ranks and could have assisted the Dallas in giving the FBI the evidence they needed to point to Oswald as the assassin at this early stage. Number six, Mrs. White did state that it was her belief more material that she has in her possession or was aware about may be contained in the personal effects of her late husband. Number seven, if Mrs. D still jealous of Helen and trying to get even with her at last, and in so doing, pointed the finger at her late. Mrs. D's attorney Holly had access to the materials before it was public. That material of this nature was taken by individuals in the Dallas Police Department. Holly was most anxious to have this material in a, quote, safe place when he learned its existence. Holly, to Mrs. D, not given adequate representation in the matter, she first approached him for representation, i.e. the embezzlement of trust fund money by the executor of the estate of the late Mr. Roscoe White. Holly surrendered this material to Dees without a fight when she requested it for the, quote, Arkansas swindlers, although his stated purpose was to arrange a handsome sale of the materials. In the opinion of Mrs. Dees and her son Ricky, the items she gave Holly are somewhat different. and content than the items she received back from the Schweiker committee. Number one, did Holly keep items of importance or work in collusion to alter the ideas of their someone else? Everything he made had to benefit himself either financially or endear himself with the Dallas PD for business reasons. Number two, were absolving
Hang on, Rob.
incorrect as to the number and condition of the photos and merely trying to show her attorney in a bad light for his failure to get her trust money back. Roscoe White was killed in an explosion at his place of business. He had cut into a gasoline drum with an acetylene torch. And
Yeah, that's not very
burns
smart.
Over 99% of his body. No.
I can't imagine that he didn't
His
know that there
attorney,
was
Lewis,
gas in that
had
drum. You know?
Right. Or even fumes. I mean,
well, you would smell it. I mean, you'd know better than to. It just doesn't seem. That just seems way something's off about that whole thing. I always thought that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It says his attorney Lewis had all of his personal papers, etc., rushed to his deathbed for identification. Among these things were keys. Lewis arranged for White's employer to be given power of attorney over the estate and qualified as the executor and not his wife. White had many insurance policies totaling approximately $200,000 plus. One policy in particular was paid for by the employer, naming him, the employer, as the beneficiary, and another paid for by White and naming Mrs. White as the beneficiary in the amount of $100,000. The keys are still in the possession of Mrs. Dees, and many have not been identified as to where they go. The employer set up some of the trusts wherein Mrs. Dees received checks in monthly amounts of approximately $650 for perhaps 2 years after the death of Mr. White. When the checks stopped coming, Dees contacted attorney Lewis, who was unable to locate the employer, De Morganson. Lewis then referred Mrs. Dees to attorney Holly. Holly has not, as of this date, been able to find the missing De Morganson or any traces of the embezzled money, although Mrs. Dees feels the money was laundered into the accounts of De Morganson's wife and children, who presently reside in Dallas. So apparently, this guy, there was, I believe, Roscoe White was working for the same outfit that Oswald once worked at, Lee Welding, right?
Was that the same welding company?
Yeah. And the owner of the company, De Morganson, skipped town after the money ran out and left his wife and family in Dallas.
Just left them stranded.
Yeah. So Mrs. Dees, her son, and various friends feel that the explosion was not an accident. Yet while there appears to be a monetary motive on the part of the employer, De Morgansons, they nevertheless feel the death of White is somehow related to the assassination of President Kennedy, and in particular, the taking by White of these photographs, some of which were not made available to the Warren Commission. So it does seem a little odd, Doug, that your employer would take out a life insurance policy on you.
That's extremely odd.
It's a little odd, man.
Yeah, that's extremely odd. It looks like he knew something. Like he knew something was about to happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd be cool with that, but
well, we already know that, like in Florida and shit, there were a couple of welding companies that were known fronts, like no-show jobs for anti-Castro operatives, right?
Right.
Yeah, we know that. They were like, it was like a cutout used by CIA. Like, hey, we're going to give you this money, and I want you to put these two guys on your payroll, and it's going to say they work for you, but they're actually off, doing this and that for us. Could have been the same type guy.
Yeah, like the job that Roy Hargraves had in Florida.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The construction companies and welding shops. And wasn't William Seymour listed as an employee of a welding supply shop in somewhere at the time of the assassination as well?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Good point.
It's a pattern. Once is an anomaly and twice is a pattern, my friend.
That's right. So back to the dude that Geneva Dees was banging, this Edward Glenn Walker fellow, okay? Mrs. 1 month ago, Mrs. Dees telephoned uh, Representative Schweik concerning a call she received from an old and current paramour. Mrs. Dees was told to contact the Select Committee on Assassinations by Schweiker. She called and related to Al Lewis the following. 5 weeks ago, Walker, the paramour, was bar hopping in Dallas when, while sitting at a bar, he encountered a man that tried to start a conversation with him about the assassination of President Kennedy. Walker was reluctant to talk, having on his mind other patrons in the bar. Walker having been recently divorced. Finally, Walker engaged the man at the bar, Teddy Foster, in conversation. Foster related that he was an attorney and that he was working for some group that was looking into the assassination, and that he had additional evidence. Foster then showed some photographs to Walker, one of which was the one contained in the book Cover Up, showing Ruby outside the Carousel Club flanked by 2 women. Walker told Foster that he recognized one of the women, whereupon Foster told Walker he knew who they were and all about them, and that they were being watched. Now,
Oh, really?
if you recall, Doug, there was allegations that Geneva Dees, Roscoe White's wife, worked at the Carousel Club for Jack Ruby for a short period of time.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was pretty well, verified, established.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Foster identified himself as an attorney with the committee that was set up in Washington. Mrs. Dees then told Al Lewis of our committee that a few days after this, her home in Paris, Texas, had been entered and burgled, but nothing was missing, and that she now feared for her life. Upon interviewing Walker, who turns out to be an unemployed, middle-aged, hippie or mod-looking barfly type, I learned that actually Walker was occasionally having sexual relations with Mrs. Dees, that Foster only told him that he was an attorney and working on the assassination, but said nothing about Mrs. Dees not having identified the photographs for Walker, nor did Walker tell Foster who the person in the photograph resembled. These photos are identified in Cover Up. Walker admitted that it was Walker that put the idea in Mrs. D's mind that her life may be in peril due to the conversation with Foster, but due instead to the fact that the information of the photos was out, and in fact, or in part due to the violent death of her husband, Roscoe. Recommendations: Walker is of no value. He met Foster once, did not know him. Dee states that she does not know Ruby, nor had she ever known Ruby, nor had she ever been in any of Ruby's clubs, nor had she ever danced or worked for Ruby in the Carousel Club.
Well, so she
and
denied
in
it.
fact, yeah. And in fact, was having an affair with Walker in '63, September to December, and met with him at bars in Fort Worth so as not to be discovered by her husband in Dallas. Additionally, Dees was a waitress in a steakhouse in the opposite part of the town from Ruby's clubs, and knew possibly that many Dallas PD members frequented the bars along the strip where Ruby's clubs were, and would therefore know better than to go there with someone other than her husband. We have the photo that Walker claims to have been shown by Foster, and a photo of how Ms. Dees looked in 1963, plus Walker's statement that there is only a slight resemblance, and of course, ID of the persons in the photo. Therefore, it would be of little value to track down Foster or deal with Walker further. So basically, Geneva Dees is denying the old conspiracy theory that she had worked for Ruby and was photographed with Ruby and all of that jazz.
Well, I thought it was like a real thing, but what do you think? Is it yes or no? Did she work there or not?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. I mean, the picture looks a lot like her, so who knows? And then it speaks of something called the rifle stock, where it says Roscoe White made a rifle stock for his son Ricky shortly after he left the Dallas PD in 1965. Ricky has used the stock on an old shotgun and felt that it was hollowed out in the area behind where the gun joins the stock. He feels that perhaps the father may have hidden something in the stock.
Well, look in the stock, Ricky. Damn.
I've made arrangements with the Naval Research Lab to use ultrasonics on the stock to determine if the stock is hollow, and if so, what is contained in the stock. Sonics were chosen so as not to damage the contents, should there be any, and if, as we suspect, the contents are film. This will be done on Monday, January the 10th, 1977.
Oh, wow.
And,
I don't guess they found anything, or we'd probably know.
Well, here we go. Ricky
snap.
White recently found a list of 8 names wrapped around a photograph of the men on the list. This may be a lineup, a bowling team, or the men White socialized with, or something even more sinister.
Is this what they found in the rifle stock?
I don't know.
Okay.
They may verify what photos White had, since he showed them only to family and close friends. And that's the extent of the letter from Kevin Walsh to Cliff Fenton of what they were looking at back in 1976, 77, and 78 when dealing with the death of Roscoe White and Geneva Dees.
Dude couldn't put the names on the list in the letter? Come on, man. We need those names.
I know. There's so many files for the HSCA that we need to go looking for, man.
That's pretty interesting about the rifle stock. I wonder if they allegedly found that list in the photograph there. Huh.
Yeah, or did the Mandarin shit come out of the stock of the rifle, you know?
Then I'd have to dismiss the rifle at that point. Yeah. Well, you know what? We've got time for 1 or 2 emails, Mr. Rob. What do you think, buddy?
Let's do it.
All right.
How are we on time?
We're doing all right. We're doing all right on time right now.
All right.
Yeah. Doing good. Emails.
All right. Let me dig in my bag here. Hold on.
We got about, let's see, 10, 20. We got about a half hour, about 30 minutes left on time.
Okay, we're good then. We're good. All right, I'm digging around in my bag. I got to move that testicle over to the other side.
Fondle that sack, Rob.
I'm fondling. All right. The sack is free. All right. I got one here. Oh, wow. Well, hello there.
What'd you find, a tick?
Lisa Marie. Yeah. All right, Caroline, you got some competition now.
I'm staying out of this.
We have a new listener. Doug.
We got new listeners all the time.
I know. This is lovely Lisa. He says, "Hi, I'm almost 40. No way. She doesn't look almost 40, but I digress.
Rob's got an underwear that's older than her.
Probably do. And she's been independently researching the assassination since she was 9.
Oh, wow.
Say that 9 times fast.
Nope.
Which was when my parents rented JFK on VHS. I was really into it until high school in the late 90s, early 2000s, but fell out of it when I felt there wasn't much more left to learn." Oh, Lisa, there is so much more to learn. "I'm getting back into it now with all of the recent record releases, and I'm so happy I discovered your podcast.
We are too.
I've been consuming it for weeks, and I plan to consume the Dallas Action and Lone Gunman podcasts ASAP.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Welcome aboard.
I will actually write a longer email with some questions at some point. I just listened to the podcast discussing the surveillance of Marina Oswald under Sobier, and Rob mentioned he couldn't find it anywhere other than some references. I suspect this means significant other born in Russia. Thoughts? Lisa.
Makes sense to me.
I want to say somebody corrected us on Sobier at some point, and it could mean significant other born in Russia, sure. Or it could mean something else. I can't remember. I cannot remember. But we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Thank you, Lisa, for all the kind words. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the show. And anytime you have any questions or comments, hey, send us an email. Good to hear from you.
All right. This one is from, I guess it bears some mention on this show. This is from our buddy Matt, LA Dodgers, baby. All right. So Paul Schrade, 97 years old, who was wounded when Bobby Kennedy was murdered, has died recently. A leader of the United Auto Workers Union and a Kennedy confidant, he remained convinced that a second gunman had been involved in the assassination. And he just wanted us to mention that, I guess, some kind of ties to the Kennedy assassinations. And, I believe I heard Paul Schrade, throughout the years, and he always believed that it was not Sirhan. I believe he even testified at some of the parole hearings for Sirhan.
Yep.
He did not believe that he was the assassin. So, yeah, definitely, it's always sad when somebody connected to these things passed away. But you know what? Paul Schrade, despite what you went through in the 60s, you lived to be 97 fucking years old. You lived a good, long life. God bless you. And you will be missed, sir.
Godspeed, sir. Yeah, sad to hear about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, always. All right. Well, we have another one from Lisa. I guess she just couldn't wait to write us again.
Well, we're very compelling.
We are compelling. She says, I saw a documentary about 15 years ago called 637 Ways to Kill Fidel Castro. That I'm gonna have to watch that. That sounds fucking amazing.
I'm gonna go look that up when we get off the air. Absolutely.
And I thought that would be right up your alley. It's about the numerous failed attempts of the U.S. government, including several presidents in the CIA and the mafia, to assassinate Castro by various means throughout the years. Check it out, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, Lisa, we will definitely check that out. It does sound right up our alley. And, we even mentioned on the show earlier about the inept attempts of the mafia and the CIA to assassinate Fidel Castro, who lived almost as long as Paul Schrade.
The Onion had a great headline. The satirical, the parody news site, The Onion, had a great headline when Castro died. But I can't remember how the headline went. But the story was that the CIA was going to try to drop a piano on the hearse during Castro's funeral procession and missed.
One last attempt at a fuck you. Here you go.
And they fucked it up again. Lisa, you're fast becoming one of our favorite listeners already, got to say.
Yeah, keep the emails coming and definitely, you got any questions, feel free to hit us up. We will answer them as funnily and truthfully as possible.
Yes. There are email addresses that Rob clicks on immediately, and there are email addresses that Rob sends to spam. And you're on the immediately list, Lisa.
Hey, nobody goes to spam, buddy. Nobody. I've read some dumb shit on here before.
Oh, yeah, that's me that sends them to spam. Okay.
There you go.
My mistake.
All right, and this last one comes from our buddy Joe Borelli.
Joe Borelli, what's up, Joe? I was messaging you with him just a few days ago.
He came in under the gun, barely. He always asks me, well, what time are y'all recording? I gotta make sure I get my question in. And I said, 10 a.m. Eastern, motherfucker. And sure enough, 9:20 a.m. Here it comes.
Joe,
it's your balls, Joey.
Yeah, Joey. But yeah, if we're Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, that's when we sit down. It's working out pretty good.
That's right. He says, hey, gents, I want to follow up on my last email regarding Marina's agent, not lawyer Rob. Hey, Joe, I fucking get it. I made a mistake. I made a misstatement that James Herbert Martin was not Marina's lawyer. This is a fellow, I guess, who worked at Six Flags, who offered to bring Marina into his home after the Secret Service kept her cooped up there for 2 weeks after the assassination, and she didn't want to go back to the Payne household.
Can you imagine being the
Not
Secret
sure,
Service
me.
agents that are like tasked with guarding her, like held up at a Quality Inn or a Holiday Inn for like 2-3 weeks at a time? Can you imagine how bored those guys were? They didn't have smartphones, Rob. The fuck did they do all day? Play cards?
Play cards, run a train. I mean, I'm sure they weren't that bored.
So they were into model railroading?
Something like that.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe,
Hey, learn something new every day. Pray continue. Sorry about that.
yes. They're not even. Not even. I could go into much more graphic detail, but I won't. I will refrain, Doug.
Praise be to Jesus.
James Herbert Martin, who I have been looking into since I found out that Marina moved in with somebody named Martin character a couple weeks after November 22nd. Now, this is because we have been blowing Joe Borelli's mind with all of these references to James Martin, John Martin, Jean Martin, Jacques Martin, all these Martins that have been associated with, the events of November 22nd, 1963.
There do seem to be an inordinate amount of them. I'll say that.
Yeah. Jack Martin. We could go on, and we keep finding more Martins. So
it's anomalous, even.
The fact that, this James Martin guy comes out of nowhere so how do you explain, how does this happen? Why would Marina move in with some guy who worked at the Six Flags Hotel and just happened to be named James Martin? That's weird.
He would have to be a paid minder, right? Cutout kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And and he just happens to have that Martin surname that the CIA must be really fucking fond of using,
Yeah.
So we are 100% sure the Secret Service would not let Marina go wherever she wanted right after the assassination. It would be closely watched and given to another handler. I incorrectly assumed that because of other CIA-related Martin characters involved in the assassination, that it was a CIA handler. But Doug made a good point that the Secret Service didn't trust the CIA or Ruth Payne at that time, so there is no way this Martin was a CIA handler. In fact, I ran into an FBI memo during my research where the FBI tried to interview James Martin again in February 1964, and he refused to speak with them on the advice of his counsel. So if he wasn't a CIA handler or an FBI handler, he was most likely working for military intelligence. Or he could have been just a disconnected, entity.
Yeah.
Not necessarily an agent, but an asset.
Like a cutout. Like, people that they turn to, somebody they can turn to for a favor. Hey, you give them a little cash, tell them to babysit this chick for a month or whatever, and,
Much like Ruth Payne, much like George de Mohrenschildt, along those lines. Not necessarily, CIA ties, but maybe assets on the ground in place.
Cut out.
Yeah. So James Martin accompanied Marina to Washington, D.C. in early February of 1964, and I found an FBI memo that discovered Martin had slept with Marina in Washington, D.C. at approximately 11:30 p.m. on February the 10th, 1964. Crazy that they have the exact details of that encounter, but you were right on that part, Rob. He was definitely hitting that. Thank you. I'm vindicated on banging. Marina was a hoe. Let's all just acknowledge the fact that she was banging everybody and anybody who would pay her any kind of attention. She was handing that shit out on a silver platter, folks. Okay?
Hey, man, she comes from a pretty gray, cold, dismal, oppressed background, America is the land of the free, home of the brave, one big sausage party, Yeah,
hence my train comment at the Six Flags Hotel with the Secret Service agent. They got this poor girl there, this poor Russian girl who's scared out of her mind, fearing getting sent back to Russia or separated from her children, and God knows what else shit they put in her head.
I don't know, man. Part of me got to think that at that point she was maybe glad. Part of her, I don't know. I mean, you got to think that there was a part of her that was glad to be shed of Oswald. They pulled her out of abject poverty in Russia and brought her over here to even more abject poverty. Because they were more poor in the United States than they were when they were in Russia. But
the guy that brought you here and you had kids with is all of a sudden arrested for the murder of the president and dead 2 days later. And so you're now a stranger in a strange land all by yourself.
And it's time to party. Apparently
so.
I guess so. I don't know. But anyway, no, we better be nice to her. We don't know what mile in her shoes, Rob. Mile in her shoes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when thrown, Marina's actual lawyer found out in D.C. that there was a big argument in the hotel lobby between Marina Martin and Throne, so significant there was a local article written about the altercation, followed by another FBI memo. And the day after they returned to Dallas, Marina moved out of Martin's home and in with Robert Oswald. Here we go.
Yeah, I think I do know that she had lived for a short period of time with Robert Oswald and his wife.
Yeah. Soon after that, Martin's contract as Marina's agent was bought out, and Robert Oswald became Marina's, quote, assistant business manager. Okay.
And that probably lasted until she married Porter, right? What year did she marry Porter? It wasn't too long after all that, was it?
I think it was 66.
Okay.
65 or 66.
But she was with him for a while before that, though, right?
Well, she likes to move quick, so who knows? She only knew Oswald for 3 weeks before she married him.
Something like
that. Who
knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Another interesting coincidence is that James Herbert Martin knew Jack Ruby. Attached is the Warren Commission document where Martin admits this and downplays their relationship as an acquaintance. And damn it, Joe, the fucking JPEG you sent me won't open, so I can't look at it. Imagine that.
We like PDF files, Joe.
Yeah, and attachments. Don't just insert a photo in the middle of the email. Come on, Joe. Get your shit together.
Yeah, really, man. Come on.
Just kidding. We love you, dude. When I tried finding out more about whether James Herbert Martin was his real name, I came across something very interesting on Ancestry.com. While looking up his father, Herbert Martin, who was in the Navy during World War II, James Herbert Martin is the only member of that family that doesn't come up in the census records, even though the rest of his family has links you can click on for more information.
Well, that's interesting.
I think we might have just found out the answer to my question, he says. And then he tries to insert another image file in the middle of the email that doesn't work either. So, I don't know what that picture is supposed to be. But he goes on to state, my updated theory is James Herbert Martin was a made-up alias and another random Martin character who was probably working for military intelligence that was inserted into the assassination nexus to serve his purpose, which was mainly, I think, to get Marina to sell the backyard photo to Life magazine and maybe promote the Nixon assassination story and then disappear. I also ran into another doc that was a list of people the HSCA wanted to interview, and James Martin was on the list of people. But of course, Doug, he could not be located.
Well, I'll be damned.
Much like Larry Crayford. This is all very, very interesting. And for now, that's all I have on this Martin guy. Thanks as always, QH Honor Roll member, Bill Borelli.
That's good work, Joe. That's good work, Joe.
Yes. I love the fact that he is deep diving into these whole Martin stories and Martin's people. And
hell yeah,
uncovering some very intriguing connections between all these people. I love it. So great job, Joe. Keep up the good work and keep these damn emails coming. in the nick of time before we record at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
That's right. That's right. And it'll be sometime in December, the next one. But that's good work, brother. Yeah, so he doesn't show up on Ancestry.com anywhere, this guy, and the HSCA couldn't find him. Very interesting. Very telling.
Yeah, nor was he on the census for the Herbert Martin family either.
That's right.
So.
Not on the... Wow. He wasn't on. He doesn't turn up.
That means he doesn't exist, folks.
That's as fucked up as it gets right there. You don't turn up on the census for the family, but all the other family members do, and the HSCA couldn't find him. He may have stumbled across a cryptonym with pocket litter right there, Rob.
Like possibly.
Quite possibly. Well, dude, this has been a hell of a fun show, bro.
Yeah. And if you would like your email read and commented on in the live format that we do here on Quick Hits, please send your emails to quickhitsjfk@gmail.com. And I promise you, no matter how dumb your email is, we will read it on the air and comment on it. I promise. But we rarely get dumb emails. They're always, they always say no question is a dumb question. So if you got questions or comments or anything you want to say or you want to hear us speak about here on the show, feel free to email us at quickhitsjfk@gmail.com and we will do it.
We will read it. We don't even have a time limit on the email segment. We just go until we're done. So, yeah, send us your emails. We do enjoy that part. And if it's a dumb email, we're going to point that out. Just be sure you realize that now. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Aren't we? We're gonna point it out. We don't care.
We will.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Also, if you're hot, we will point that out as well.
Rob will do this. I don't get to see the thing, but Rob does, and he tells me, and I believe him. I mean, I don't think he's going to tell me, like, a chick is hot and she turns out to be a sweat hog. I don't think you'd do that to me, Rob, right?
No, I'm being 100% truthful.
100% truthful. That's a good thing.
We love our female listeners, and we need more of them. So, look, if you like the show and you want to turn some people on, make sure you send them a link to the show. Check out. Make sure it's a funny one. And something that they want to listen to. Yeah, like the old Dago. I think it was episode 14. I mean,
I miss Dago.
That's my favorite episode.
I think my favorite of all time.
It was just him and stuff.
Yeah. My favorite of all time was I think maybe Bart's first appearance. That was a good one. Yeah, back about 3 years ago, I think. Well. All right, Rob, I got to hit the head in a bad way. So what do you say we close this thing out? What do you think? Oh, there's the music. Go ahead, my friend.
Hey, good job, Momo.
Good job,
yes. If you would like to follow me on the social medias, hopefully Twitter does not explode and disappear. Thank you, Elon Musk. And if it does, well then, I guess you can't follow me at the Lone Gunman 7 on Twitter anymore. That would be a shame. But if it doesn't, feel free to follow me there. Make sure you are liking and subscribing and commenting on the YouTube videos, on the YouTube channel, the Lone Gunman Podcast, and on Facebook, the Lone Gunman Podcast Facebook page is always there for your perusal. And make sure you listen to the show anywhere fine podcasts are consumed. Doug.
As for myself and Twitter, I'm not on Twitter. I don't give a fuck about Elon Musk. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for even more ongoing, objective, critical thinking, forward-moving and study and research of the assassination of John Kennedy. Be sure to find, listen to, follow my show, the Dallas Action Podcast, presented by Wall Street Window, available at Spreaker.com and everywhere else you find quality podcasts, like Deezer. Parenthetically, Rob, as of 2 days ago, if you Google the terms Victor Krulak, Letter to Fletcher Prouty, General Ed Lansdale, the Deezer link to this show, Quick Hits, is fourth on Google. 2 spots ahead of Prouty.org and 7 spots ahead of that Canadian show. Oh, yeah. The Dallas Action, presented by Wall Street Window, like this show, another fine quality podcast from Drop D Podcast Productions in the heart of Music Row, Music City, USA. So, from my man Rob Clark, this is Doug Campbell saying tune in again next time, guys, when, upon hearing Oliver Stone actually tell the audience in Quebec City that he doesn't believe anything Fletcher Prouty ever said about General Ed Lansdale and the JFK assassination, we'll hear Black Op Radio's Lynn Osanik say,
Girl. The way he Brad get mad, I don't even know what to say. God damn. God damn.
And we're out. Peace.
we are out.
God damn.
God damn.
Le croissant.